Hello everyone, good to see you all. Namaste, and thanks for being here today. I'm just waiting to hear back from Veda Education, and we will start once they give a green signal. Okay, so there we go. I was wondering if there will be a translation today or not. So it's going to be just us for today. So great. I see you all have joined from different parts of the world, and thanks for being here today. So today we'll be discussing about Ayurvedic perspective of breast cancer and mastopathies. It's a wonderful topic presented by Veda Pulse, and it's very important as well. And I thank them for giving me this space. Now, I should also tell you that because of severe rains and winds the day before yesterday, we have had some problem with internet connectivity. It's very, I'm just working with a standby at the moment. And if at all we face any kind of disturbances, I'm really sorry about that. I do apologize in advance. So the term mastopathy, it is basically any kind of problem in breast, but then the term is usually spoken in context of any kind of glandular change in breast, and that usually happens in relationship with hormones, and it is something which could happen during menstrual period. Usually that is the link, and it is a kind of benign change in the mammary gland. It can present just as pain or nodules, swelling or cysts, the kind of pain as well as the tightness one feels in the chest region or around the breast. It is also referred in context of fibrocystic diseases or fibrocystic changes that occurs in the breast parenchyma with prominent lymphocytic infiltration, and that is usually found in context of complication of diabetes and long-standing diabetes. So basically we can say that it is a term which is referred to the changes that happen in the breast parenchyma. Now, depending upon the level of the disease, the symptoms of mastopathy can vary in severity. Now, there is a pulling type of pain, pricking type of pain, shortness of breath at times because it feels so tight, and it usually happens around menstrual period. One may link it to premenstrual syndrome as well, but it is not necessarily it doesn't necessarily fall into the same category always, because swellings and nodules or cysts are sometimes palpable, and there could be some kind of fluid discharge as well when these symptoms are present. So this takes a special importance when we speak in context of breast cancer as well, because preliminary symptoms of breast cancer could present in the same way, or advanced symptom of breast cancer could also present in the same manner. And that is why every time there is any such occurrence, or one sees or feels such symptoms, they have to undergo through a detailed examination to rule out the more serious kind of implications. But basically, when we speak of mastopathy, it is a benign feature. And then there is breast cancer, of course. It is a kind of type of cancer that starts in the breast. Usually, it is about, again, the duct as well as the glands. So the milk producing apparatus secreting as well as discharging apparatus of the breast are involved here. And when it is referred as breast cancer, it is always these organs that are involved. The other supportive structure of the breast can also have pathology, but then that is not generally referred to as breast cancer because it is a kind of generalized thing. And the main types of breast cancers are ductal carcinoma in situ, invasive breast cancer, the triple negative variety, angiosarcoma of the breast, inflammatory breast cancer, Peg's disease, and so on. So this is about the general idea of what we're dealing today from a modern perspective, but we'll go into the details of how we speak about it, or what are the diseases of breast from Ayurvedic point of view. Now, the physio-anatomy of the breast in Ayurveda. It is one among the pratyanga. The name of this organ in Sanskrit is stana. It is singular as well as plural. And it is one among the pratyanga as well. That is the organs. It is an ashaya. That is, it gives space for filling up, and that is necessarily the breast milk. So it is an ashaya. When in context of stanya or the breast milk, we call it as stanyashaya. And it is the moola of Shukravaha srotas in both the sexes. Now this is very important. It is how you understand that it is related with the secondary sexual development as well. And then there are other things, other subtle details, that there are dhamanis which run from the breast to the genital region, and it is not an anatomical dhamani, but it is more of a physiological thing. So we don't see any artery or vein running in this way practically in the body, but it is more of a physiological implication where it speaks about the hormones which act on both the regions. So that is how you link it to the Shukravaha srotas. It is also a Bahirmukha srotas, and one each in each breast, so 2 in number. And this srotas is stanyavahini srotas, or the srotas of producing breast milk. And the moola, or the main parts of this, are the lactiferous glands, or the granthis which produce the milk, ducts, and nipple. There are 2 marmas on each side around the breast, and that they are stanarohita marma and stanamoola marma. And associated with these marmas are siras as well, which should not be injured at any cost. And there are 2 dhamanis which flow stanya, or the breast milk, in females, and the corresponding ones carry shukra from stana in males. There are 10 peshis. Peshi are the supporting structure, you can say, 5 on each side. Now peshi, the formation of peshi is from mamsa dhatu. When mamsa undergoes expansion in a required manner by the influence of vayu or vata during the garbhavastha or during the fetal life, it creates peshi. And these species are already distributed in the body in the fetal life itself, depending upon the particular gender. And they further on, when the time comes, they further develop into a particular organ. And in this case, after hitting puberty, it forms, it supports the stanyavaha srotas and forms stana, or the breast. It is important to remember this peshi, because it is there are only 2 things in this organ. It is the stanyavaha srotas supported by peshi, and a little bit of medas around. So there are no other no other dhatus involved. There is no asthi, majja, or there is no hardcore mamsa as well. Like it is not a very muscular organ. It is a soft organ which is supported by um, uh, all soft tissues. And the diseases of breast, as per Ayurveda, Sushrutacharya says that they're absent before puberty because the srotas are not open yet, which is very true. And even today, you can say that the incidence of uh, diseases related to lactiferous ducts or glands are very uncommon before puberty. It is possible when after the srotas is open up. Issues related to breast are high in pregnant or nursing women. When they are lactating, there are particular problems that occur with it. Sorry, no sound. Say, can you hear me now? Okay, great. So either in lactating women or non-lactating women, the diseases could happen, but usually found after menarche. So these are the pathologies related to breast we can see very commonly in the Ayurvedic literature. There are some specific breast pathologies and some of the non-specific ones as well. Non-specific ones are not limited to only the ones that I've mentioned, but these are the common ones. So the specific ones are stanakilaka, stanashofa, vidridhi, and stanoruja. Stanakilaka is an inflammatory kind of pathology, which also includes a fair bit of fibrosis, which is basically involved around a foreign body. And it could be a substance which cannot be metabolized in the body, and that is why body creates a particular kind of defensive response. Shofa, Stanashofa is mastitis, again an inflammatory process. Stanavidradhi is breast abscess, again the culmination of an inflammatory process. Stanoruja, or the pain, this could be in context of the menstrual cycle, the usual menstrual cycle, which has gone a little abnormal. That is why there are features like stanoruja. So it is hormone dependent. There could be visarpa, which involves the breast as well, and again it is an inflammatory process. There could be granthi, or the nodular or cystic kind of growth, which also is an inflammatory process, but it could be active or it could be very subclinical feature as well. And then there is arbuda, the fixed hard growth, which we usually put in a category of breast cancer. So if you see overall, inflammation is the thing that stands out very conspicuously, except for the stenoruja, the pain, which may come in context of menstrual cycle. All others are definitely more serious pathologies. And as per the modern literature, the causes of mastopathy cannot be treated. And instead, the treatment is rather focused on symptoms, the pain relief, gels and tablets, and so on. And they also at times refer to the plant-based medicine. And when it comes to the cyst or such nodular structures, it can be often punctured and drained with hollow needle. So it is in the case of abscess or in case of cyst. That's the one. Very rarely, I mean, it is termed as mastopathy, could be proliferating, and it can contain atypical growths as well. And that is when there is a serious risk of breast cancer or malignancy. So inflammation is a characteristic feature here. I mean, the way Ayurveda puts it as well. And Ayurveda focuses more on this because throughout whatever is the change that we see later on, inflammatory reaction is the base for it. It should either start as an inflammation or it should start as a foreign body, which again creates an inflammation. Foreign body in this context need not come only from outside. It could also be unmetabolized substance produced within the body, which cannot have which cannot be excreted, or which doesn't have a proper culmination. Or it could be um, a real substance which has come from exogenous source, from outside, and it has entered into the body, and the cell finally, where it comes to, doesn't know how to deal with it, and it cannot be excreted, it cannot be expelled, and it sits there and it becomes the problem. So either ways, there is some kind of inflammation. It could be red hot inflammation or it could be cold type of inflammation, but that is necessary here. So that is what is the beginning of all the story here. The swelling or shofa. Shofa is explained as Sharira Ekadesha Uttita. Sharira, when the doshas come down, lodge down in a particular place in the body and creates an elevation, it is called as shofa or shotha. Both are synonyms. Now this can be warm type where there is a lot of activities going on, the blood and pitta are actively involved, and there you see the classical features of inflammation. Or it can be more of a slow type, the cool type, where it may run in a subclinical level, or the swellings could also occur due to the extravasation of fluids and so on. But whatever it is, body can tolerate the displaced object for a while, even though it is of its own. If it is displaced, or if it is elevated, or if it is out of its range, the rest of the cells or the neighboring structures can tolerate to a certain level. But if it does not get resolved in time, then then it starts giving certain impact and can lead to more permanent change. Initially, it could be microscopic, and then it might become a visible anatomical or pathological change. Now, when we say it has to get resolved in time, it could be due to reversal of pathology or by forced flushing from the body. Reversal of the pathology is done up to a certain level. That is, if you are familiar with the Kriya Kala, it can be done to the fourth or even early fifth stage. But if it is in the late fifth stage or in any stage further on, then it cannot be reversed. So at that time, it has to be flushed out of the body. And here in this context, when I speak of flushing out, in the context of inflammation, it is by controlled suppuration. Controlled suppuration is encouraged so that the pathology gets resolved right there in the best natural way possible and the way the body can deal it. It should be controlled. It should not be let out of control. It should not, it should be controlled in the sense we should take care that the whole body doesn't get involved. There are no generalized complications, but this kind of controlled suppuration is possible when inflammation is localized and it is suitable to drain out. So especially in case of breast, this can be practiced, and it is practiced. Up till the late stage of fifth Kriya Kala, that is late stage of Vyaktavastha, we try to resolve it by treating it so that the pathology gets reversed. There is no adverse reaction. But once you see there are inevitable anatomical changes that are going to happen, then you try to flush it out. This is the general line of treatment for any kind of inflammation in the body. You try to release it from the nearest outlet possible. So today we'll discuss more into the reasons of why this happens. What to do later on? There could be many options given the kind of environment we have today. But why this happens? To understand that, we have to dig more into the causes, because that is the place where you got a certain edge. You can prevent it. And this is something which is still not very much spoken about today. It is a sort of mystery, and a lot of things are being researched, but the modern medicine has not reached into these steps. It is worth researching, but you don't have to wait for the researches to be published to be safe. So you can practice and be safe, and let the papers come when they come. So this is the general pathology of SOFA. Now here, let me take the pointer. Yeah. So this is the generalized nidana, or the causative factors for the aggravation of vata, for vitiation of vata rather. And this one, these are the general causative factors for the vitiation of pitta and for the kapha. These may be in a context of, these are relevant in the context of SOFA, in the inflammation. They are the nearest reasons they cause, which can cause inflammation. Now, when we speak of the causative factors, there are again two types. One, the ones that can directly cause the particular pathology. And the next set are those which build up to these particular cause. So when we speak of Kriya Kala, and Kriya Kala is particularly important in this context because we speak of inflammation. The whole Kriya Kala is set on the base of inflammation. It is for this particular process that this is a classical example for Kriya Kala. No other example can fit the Kriya Kala so well as SOFA does. And SOFA is particularly important because it not only leads to abscess or any kind of suppurative process, but this is the basic process which can lead up to many kinds of problems in the body. In Charaka Samhita, Charaka gives so much of importance for Jwara. And then in the Sutrasthana itself, he speaks about Trishoti Adhyaya. It is Trishoti Adhyaya, although it is about Shota, it is not discussed in Nidana or in Chikitsa. It is discussed in Sutra because it is the most fundamental thing, fundamental pathology. And Sushruta Samhita is from the beginning to end speaks about inflammation, because that is the most important thing for a surgeon or a general practitioner, for a Shalya Tantra specialist or for Kaya specialist. Inflammation means a lot in different levels. So inflammation could be the way inflammation is seen today, or inflammation could be in the level which is much, much deeper, and which we are exploring, we are trying to understand with the modern perspective in these days. So there is a lot of talk about subclinical level of inflammation, which can trigger anything basically, right from obesity to diabetes mellitus, cardiac disorders, or all the disorders of CVS, or related to certain neurological problems as well as cancer. And you also have inflammation basically in everything, and it is also one of the key things that can cause mutation or that can disrupt the fertility and so on. So that is why we speak about inflammation, and that is what this spoke about in context of Trishotha, or in case of Jwara, or in case of Shofa. So in each context, in each pathology, you probably can trace it back to some kind of inflammatory response, either evident or subclinical. And that is why when we speak of inflammation, we can speak about Kriya Kala to understand every pathology in a better way. So here I go back to Kriya Kala to explain this process in a better way. So these nidana, or the causative factors, are the specific nidana. There are generalized nidana that lead up to the specific nidana. Now, what are the generalized nidana? We know that now the famous shloka, that is Ushnena Sahita Rukshadyaha causes, we see Chaya of Vata. Chaya is the first Kriya Kala, or the building up of Nidana. That is what that is where the pathology begins with. So Ruksha, etc. gunas of Vata, when increases in environment as well as in food, but Ushna being the main property here, which checks the rest of the properties and keeps them in a line, so that there is no immediate increase of vata, but vata starts building upon. You can resolve, and there are preliminary features here. So where it says that where one feels aversion to those things which can increase vata. So when vata is increasing, but still in a natural way, still working properly, all functions going on well, but the property of vata is increasing in the body, and the person feels aversion to all of those things which can further increase vata. This can happen as due to ahara or vihara, or the food and lifestyle. It can also happen naturally with the diurnal changes, with the seasonal changes, and whatever is going on in the environment. So it is a natural thing, it can happen, and if one is very attentive towards one's health, then you can reverse it right there. It comes to the prakopa level when the situation changes. So Ushna was the feature which was keeping it in line, in tow, and if the warmth reduces and suddenly or slowly there is a gradual change to Shita, it could be seasonal or it could be anything else. So when Ushna goes off and there is increased coldness, then it is set loose, and there is prakopa of vata. You see more aggravated features of vata. Along with that, you can also have chaya and prakopa in the process, generalized chaya and prakopa. So the building up is chaya and vitiation or aggravation is prakopa. So along with that, if these features are in excess and there are other adding on factors like tiredness, or if one is going on fasting, because fasting is also a trend and it is supposed to be healthy, and if one doesn't understand where to stop, then that could lead up to vata prakopa again, emaciation as well, and suppression, all leading to or all derived from some kind of control. And this control is not in balance, it is not in accordance to what is required to the body, and then there is vitiation of vata. It goes overboard and lodges itself in this place, the tvak, mamsa, and rakta. It is in between these or within these that it lodges itself, and then there is shofa. And similarly, for pitta, shitena yukta tikshnadya. So tikshnadi guna, which are general gunas of pitta, but is countered with shita. So shita is keeping it in when there is predominance of shita guna, or cold climate or cold property in everything. But then addition of tikshna, etc. properties, then pitta gets piled up, and when the situation turns to ushna or warmth, it sets loose, and then along with these features as well, and especially when there is when there is extreme cold temperature around, one feels or one goes towards sun and fire. So excessive sunbathing or excessive exposure to fire, not just during winters or not just during the cold season, but prolonged usage, or even when there is the change of season, and suddenly after a long winter you have summer, and you go over and over with the exposure to sun, and it is already warm, it is not cold anymore. So that is the kind of thing that leads to vitiation of pitta, and again it can lodge into tvak, mamsa, rakta, in between these layers or within, and cause shofa. And the third kapha, it is again shitena yukta snigdhadi. Snigdha, here shita is not against kapha, but because the property of kapha is to stay in balance or stay where it is, it doesn't bother to create any problem unless there is a provocative factor, and that is ushna. So all the properties of kapha, when you start giving it, it just piles up. But then when it is exposed to warmth, then it starts melting, and then it creates a problem. So prakopa can also be actually of two types. There could be chaya prakopa, as we discussed now, or there could be achaya prakopa, or when all of these factors come suddenly or come in excess. You don't have to have a history of building up of a certain dosha. If these factors are quite enough to create an instant prakopa, then an instant prakopa also works. So these should be very strong and in that case, but then it can cause an instant vitiation as well. And they don't have to work individually, they can work in combination. It could be vata pitta, vata kapha, or vata pitta kapha altogether, and in different proportions. They can all lodge into the same place and create shofa. So there's a question here, how excess of vata creates shofa. Now, vata shofa is it creates a particular kind of shofa by distending. It is like distension of bladder, that is a classical example. It doesn't have to contain any specific thing, or it could be just a serious collection. But distension is the main feature, and distension is always created by vata. It can blow up the gap, or it can just cause a it is like a bellowing effect. So that is how vata creates shofa. It need not be warm or evidently inflammatory in feature. It is cold, it can be hard, it can be non-suppurative, it can start very quickly and end very quickly as well. And at times it also has the um, feature to move from one place to another. So depending upon the site, depending upon the location and the structures involved, the feature of Vata Shofa can change. It can be deep rooted or it can be very superficial as well, depending upon where it is lodged. And because the basic feature of Vata is Chalaguna, it can move and can change the feature very often. Vata Vataja Shofa, especially if at all if it is in any other place, can or in the abdominal area, can be confusing. It can represent as gulma, and it is also again an inflammatory feature itself. So Vata Shofa, the classical feature is that it is there is distension, and the suppurative process is not necessary, but it could be extravasation of fluid. It could be it could be just a serious discharge within. Is that all right? Is that clear? Thank you. Also, again, coming to Samanya Nidana, specifically for Shofa, there are other reasons as well, which are more due to our own problem. By conducting improper sneha, sweda, vamana virechana, sthapana, anuvasana, or even shira virechana, a physician can themselves create more problems. So if it is ayatha prayoga, that is, if it is not done properly, or if the samsarjana krama is not followed properly, we can have an iatrogenic pathology. So it may be instantaneous again, or it may just build up the toxins in the body furthermore and create a problem later on. So it is very important for us to take care when you do, when you give Virechana or when you practice Virechana, Panchakarma on yourself. Every step, at every step, it has to reach the Samyak Lakshana. If we don't reach Samyak Lakshana, or if we deviate from the process, it can lead up to more serious problems later on. Shofa can also be a complication of long-standing problems. Some other long-standing problems, seemingly very benign ones, like chatti, or like alasaka or indigestion, like visuchika or inflammatory pathologies of gastrointestinal region, or shwasa and kasa, that is respiratory problems, long-standing respiratory problems. Atisara, that is diarrhea or dysentery of any origin, which is long-standing. Emaciation of tissues, of anemia or pandaroga, of udara or ascites, of jvara, again, there is a fever. Or fever, as you see, fever, and fever which is subclinical as well. Of pradara, that is uncontrolled or excessive uterine bleeding, menorrhagia, metrorrhagia, and so on. Bhagandara, that is fistula in ano, and arthras, that is hemorrhoids. So SOFA can occur as a complication of all of these important diseases as well. SOFA can also be a partner of kushta or skin problems. Kandu, that is itching in the body. Itching in the body, and today we know that it is related to histamines and allergic reaction in the body. It have always some direct relation to inflammation. And kushta, pidaka, kandu, all are superficial issues, or it could be localized or generalized, and they are related to skin, but on a deeper level, it always involves rakta and pitta. And SOFA also comes directly by withholding or suppressing the urge of chardi, that is vomiting, kshavatu, sneezing, udgara, or the belching, shukra, and vata, mutra, purisha, vega. So very specific vegas are related with inflammation. Excessive fasting or excessive walking as well can cause inflammation of various degrees. Walking is good, but you have to know what suits you and how much suits you. And constant indulgence of guru, amla, lavana, katu, ahara, pishtana, or very starchy food, and sour fruits and green vegetables. This is very interesting that constantly in context of Granthi, Shota, and Arbhuda, we have green vegetables as the causative factors, that is leafy vegetables. Leafy vegetables and their mixture with dairy is one of the main reasons that is mentioned all throughout in Ayurveda as one of the causative factors for this kind of inflammatory reaction. And of course, there is excessive alcohol and viruddhana, of course, and newly harvested grains. Newly harvested grains are known to produce more of a amla vipaka, or more of a sour kind of change in the body, and that is why newly harvested grains are not used immediately. You wait for 1 year, and these days you see in the supermarket as well, rice or wheat which is aged for so and so many years. So those are better choices, because newly harvested grains can produce this kind of alcoholic fermentation within the body, and we don't want that, because anything that turns sour can create more inflammatory change. And anupa and avadaka mamsa, fish, say for example, or anything that comes from water, meat of aquatic animals. So these are one of the important factors which can directly cause SOFA. And you also have lavana rasa, that is salt. Too much of salt in food causes SOFA, we know that. And how sthana samshaya occurs. Now this is the fourth stage of Kriya Kala. First is Jaya, the piling up. Second is Prakopa, the aggravation. Third is Prasara, the aggravated dosha goes looking throughout the body for a very suitable space to lodge in. And this suitable space is, it is decided either the doshas should originate, the pathology should originate in that particular place, or the doshas, circulating doshas, get an anatomically weak point or very convenient place to lodge in. where the organs or where the part of the body is already strained, or it is already under a lot of tension. There is something else going on there, or it is just recovering from a weakened state. There is some kind of impairment in circulation. Either the waste materials are not being uh, excreted, or the circulation is poor, or whatever that is going on. Even wearing tight clothes in that particular place, this invites the doshas to lodge in there. So wherever it gets that kind of crevice, it starts growing in that area. And this sthana samshraya is where dosha meets the doshas. That is the srotas, dhatu, ashaya, and so on. So it can lodge within the srotas and cause problem for that particular srotas, as well as the dhatus further down, dhatus which go through that particular channel, or it can create a problem in particular ashaya, and also reflect on the structures nearby, or in a particular dhatu, and cause vitiation of that particular dhatu, its srotas, as well as the dhatus which move through or which are influencing the particular dhatu as well. So this is the avastha of sthana samshraya. And here in this case, because it is lodging in breast, the unique structure of breast, as we discussed earlier, it is made out of peshi, a little bit of fat, and the stanyavahini srotas. The supporting dhatus, other dhatus that are involved here in production of stanya are rasa. And of course, when rasa is not involved, anyway, rakta, mamsa, and medasa are involved in this organ. So these are the ones that gets vitiated. So these are the influence of a particular dosha when it is in normal balance and when it goes in an abnormal way. Vata gives the strength of will. It supports respiration. It is the one which stimulates activity. It provides balanced movement for the doshas, dhatus, and for everything else in the body. And it provides the balanced culmination as well for the dhatus. So it is the one which divides between sara and kitta, the essence as well as the waste substance, and it is the one which should regulate the expulsion of waste in whatever manner it is. It could be in the manner of sweat, it could be in the manner of respiration, it could be in the manner of feces or urine or whatever it is. The expulsion, the property to expel it is driven by vata. And the balance, that is what it is, the balance movements and expulsion. Now look at it in from the level of a single cell, and it starts giving a very different meaning. In case of pitta, saying or showing, darshana, that is when you speak in a gross world, it is you refer it to the vision, but it also happens within the body. Every cell is traced down, or it is every function is traced down because of certain chemical factor which is associated with it. We have chemoreceptors, we have the ones which release certain chemicals to make its existence known or to attract other cells. So this kind of showing or seeing activity, it is the property of pitta. Digestion, metabolism, gross as well as microscopic, cellular level. The warmth, thirst and hunger, softness of the body, the dominance, of certain feature, the clarity to do certain things and not to do certain things, or giving a clear picture, and intelligence of what to do and how to do, what is required and not required. This kind of intelligence is the characteristic feature of Pitta. If there is no intelligence, then we look into what happens. And Kapha produces stickiness. It is this thing that keeps the whole body intact, you can say, and it is a thing in a person which which invites friendship, or which invites this kind of bondage. And in a cellular level as well, it is a thing that keeps the cell intact, in line with the others. It doesn't let the cell loose and to go wherever it wants. It provides that kind of bonding, stability, weight, fertility, the strength, the forbearance, firmness, command, and moderation. And loss of these features will predominantly, you can say, evidently shows loss of bondage and loss of moderation. And when there is no pitta or abnormal pitta, there is abnormal intelligence or loss of intelligence and abnormal kind of energy as well. When you speak of it in a cellular level, or in a very microscopic level, in the Sukshma Sharira, you see that all of these are talked about a lot in case of cell division. It is these things that are discussed when I discuss about cancer. So, just getting the pointer. Yeah. So each cell has its own respiration, which happens in mitochondria. I can say there are two main parts. One is the nucleus and what happens around nucleus, and the other one is what happens with the mitochondria in the cell. So mitochondria is responsible for the release of energy, and it is responsible for the cell division as well. And when we speak of abnormal growths, all abnormal growths have certain kind of they're called abnormal because that is not normal, and they have anatomical impact. This impact could be benign, where the cells change in pattern and they form a protective barrier to contain a particular substance, or it is let loose. It loses its intelligence, it loses its moderation, and it creates abnormal functions, or it creates abnormal activities in the body, and doesn't obey to any of the rules of that particular area. And you can see how each one of it is contributing to that particular pathology. So when there is no balance of division or culmination, when there is no intelligence of what is to be done, and or when there is no energy to do it properly, or energy to evacuate it properly as well, or when there is no bondage, there is no rule of law, or there is no command, or there is no moderation, that is when it turns into into a totally different feature. And this is the most important of all here. So loss of balance and loss of intelligence will create a localized pathology. Loss of bondage can create a generalized pathology. So coming very specifically to the breast pathologies here, These are the doshas and doshyas. So whatever we have discussed so far, vata, vata, pitta and kapha, and rakta, mamsa and medas, owing to the specific anatomy of that the organ. There is nothing else that can be vitiated. Of course, there is rasa dhatu involved, and rasa getting involved and creating a problem in a lactating mother related to the breast milk is dealt in a totally different manner. It is not considered as stana roga. It is not considered as the disorder of breast. It is specifically related to the production of breast milk, and we do it completely in a different chapter, or it is not considered under mastopathies. It is stanya roga. It is related to breast milk. So hence rasa is not involved here. For the diseases of breast, there is no involvement of rasa. It is only rakta, mamsa and medas, because anatomically they are the ones that are present there. And then there is this contribution of vajra, that is the non-metabolized foreign body. You can say it a foreign body, or you can say it is a substance which cannot be broken down. And that can also lead up to breast pathology. So how does this work? This particular substance, it is classically referred to as an ingested substance. Now, while eating, by mistake, you ingest something which cannot be broken down. That can create a compound which can get lodged in anywhere, in any place, and specifically in a lactating mother, it can get lodged in breast, because it is very active. That particular organ is very active, and that is why sthana samshraya, it is easy for sthana samshraya to occur in such place, and that creates a hard nodule or hard cystic formation, which can be cystic if it is if vata is more, or it can be stony if there is more of kapha, or it can be inflammatory if it has more of influence of pitta. So separation is possible. It triggers an inflammatory reaction, and there could be a fibrosis type of development there to hold this vajra. This is called vajra, this foreign material which has come there, or the substance which cannot be metabolized but has got lodged into stanyavaha srotas. It is called vajra, and there could be a fibrocystic collection. It could form a fibrocystic collection because of the fibrosis of adjacent structures, and this creates a mass. It can be a hard mass, stony mass, or it can be inflammatory and suppurative. It can drain itself out through the lactiferous ducts, because it happens in the same gland, or in the same duct, or totally in the same srotas. So, or if it doesn't happen by itself, one can open or drain it as well, or it can be sucked out, or it can be drained out in one or the other manner. So that is about stanakilaka, and this is the only breast disorder that happens within the stanyavaha srotas. But again, it doesn't include any particular. It doesn't include rasa dhatu, because it is not the pathology of stanya. It is a pathology of srotas. We won't go into the details of the vidridhi or stana shofa, because they follow the particular line of abscess. That is, they are the inflammation which end up with the formation of an abscess, and it is a different line. So today's topic, we are dealing mainly with those kind of growths which are not going to separate, or which hardly would ever separate, and rather cause more of a benign or malignant swelling in the body. So these do come under Granthi and Arbuda title. Granthi, you see the doshas involved and the dhatus or doshyas involved in the pathology of all stanaroga, or the pathology of the breast, and that of Granthi or Arbuda are same. That is to say that the ashaya, or the place, is already very supportive of this particular pathology. Whatever it wants, it is already present there. It is like inviting it with the same raw materials. You just need to have the prakopita doshas, or the vitiated doshas, and some minor imbalance within the stana or within the breast for it to come in and cause stana samshaya there. Because all other dhatus, all other doshas that are present, they are very conducive to Granthi and Arbuda. Or Granthi, you can say, is more benign form. Arbuda is the malignant version of it. And here, while speaking of the general samprApti or general pathology of Granthi and Arbuda, it is also important to note that Vata Rakta is one of the direct contributors of Arbuda. If there is the pathology of Vata Rakta in the body, that is again a generalized inflammatory process, you can say, within the body. It can locate itself anywhere, but it is a generalized pathology. It can be one of the starting point for Arbuda to happen. And Arbuda, of course, can happen anywhere in the body, but it can also occur in stana. And because all of the doshas and doshyas are very conducive, very supportive, stana becomes one of the most susceptible region. The salient features of Granthi and Arbuda. Now, Granthi is a rounded, elevated, hard swelling. Arbuda is also rounded. It is also elevated. It is also hard, but it is more deep-rooted. It is fixed. Granthi can still be, movable, but Arbuda is fixed. It has deeper roots. There is more infiltration, and it could be slightly painful, but it has a big and broad base. It is constantly growing. Arbuda grows. The constant growth is a feature of Arbuda, whereas Granthi has a definite shape and it stops. It may increase in size, but then there is a definite shape. But Arbuda, it doesn't have to have a definite shape. It grows anyway, and it is non-separating in feature. There could be dense elevation or swelling of mamsa. So mamsa dhatu is definitely involved. We don't compare all the cancers to Arbuda, or all Arbuda cancers. No, that is not so. But then Arbuda and cancer meet in some level. There is a definite relation here. Certain varieties of Arbuda and certain varieties of cancers do match up. So the definite feature of Vataja Arbuda, Vataja Granthi, Vataja Arbuda, Pittaja Granthi, Pittaja Arbuda, Kaphaja as well, do simulate to great degree. It is only, the features are similar, very similar. It is only that the granthi are smaller and more superficial and easier to treat, and arbudas are deeper, much deeper, much huge, as well as very difficult to treat as well. So that is the difference between granthi and arbuda in these cases. There is Raktaja arbuda, which cannot be treated, and or rather, which is very different to granthi, and Mamsa arbuda as well is very different to the granthi, corresponding granthi. So Vajaja arbuda produces aches and pains of different kinds. And there is stretching type, pricking type, pulling type, cutting type, and tearing type of pain, or any other varieties of pain. But pain is the most important feature. It is the constant feature, and it is the differentiating feature. It can be, if at all, you can see it from the outside, or if it is reflected from the outside, then you may see a little darkish discoloration on the area. You may feel there is distension in the area, and if at all you open it, it may produce just a serous discharge or slightly reddish mixed thin fluid. It is not pus, it is not fat, it is not a product of suppuration, but it could be just the collection of the inflammatory liquids or inflammatory discharge, or just the tissue discharge or extravasated fluids. That's it. This is reflected in the features of mastopathy. In context of breast, you can say this is the way mastopathies are described. Now it reflects here very well. Pittaja arbuda produces extreme sensation of burning kind of pain. So burning is the most important feature. Temperature is the most important feature. Inflammatory process is very active, and that is why there is all kinds of pain, and there is a severe throbbing kind of pain. High temperature. One could also suffer fever if at all it is there. I mean, if at all it is more in a severe form. Arbudas are always severe forms. So the milder forms of the same is granthi. We are talking about arbudas here because that is the upper limit. So anything that is milder to that, you put it under the category of granthi. Further mild when there is nothing palpable, or when there is no fixed nodule or a cystic structure, which you can definitely put into the category of pathology. Then it goes under the category of shofa or abscess. So on opening pittaja arbuda or even granthi, one can find a bright yellow red discharge, which is again very warm. So it is there is some good amount of pus, good amount of bleeding, and inflammation is still going on. So you need to do a lot more in this case. So this is active inflammatory variety of pathology. In kapha, it produces a cold swelling. The inflammation is very undertone. It is subclinical, but then such a pathology should be present. There is inflammation which is producing this kind of swelling. There's no discoloration here, and there may be very mild pain. So pain is also not the feature, but the main feature is that it keeps on increasing very slowly, although, but it has a very thick, stony consistency. It is heavy. It is very deep rooted. So on opening, it produces. It may produce pale pus-like discharge. Now, it can fall into the category of malignancy, it can fall into the category of benign growth as well. So the feature that differentiates Granthi and Arbuda is the excess of kapha and excess of meda. When meda comes in, when there is excessive growth of meda and mamsa, then the medha is lost. Medha is the intelligence. It is the moderation. It is the thing that says where to stop and when to start, when to stop, what to do and what not to do. That is lost when there is excess of medas and mamsa, in case of medas and mamsa. And coming to further varieties of arbuda here. The Rakta variety of Arbuda. There is Rakta Granthi as well, Siraja Granthi, or which is basically Rakta variety. But Siraja Granthi is rather implicative of the site where it happens. It always occurs within the Sira. But Rakta Arbuda can occur anywhere. And Rakta Arbuda can occur in breast, whereas Siraja Granthi is not very common in breast. Siraja Granthi are rather in those places where there can be venous incompetence or varicosity or pressure of veins or pressure within the circulatory system. But Rakta Arbuda is rather something else. So when vitiated dosha causes sampidana and sankocha of rakta within the siras. Now this is very, very important. Sampidana and sankocha of rakta. Rakta, the dhatu doesn't behave normally. It doesn't function normally. The cells are probably not normal. There is a pressure on it to there is a squeezing type of pressure in rakta. Now this can happen because of a chemical reaction. This can happen because of an anatomical problem as well. So if the cell suffers anatomically or chemically under the influence of other chemicals within the blood, then there is it triggers a particular kind of inflammatory reaction which stimulates or which also vitiates mamsa and may further vitiate meda if at all it is unchecked. So this kind of rakta vitiates mamsa and causes a suppurative process in both the dhatus. And specifically, you see it as a mamsa arbuda or elevation of mamsa, or muscle lumps become prominent, muscle ankura, or a tiny cauliflower-like mass that you see as a salient feature of cancer. It is the classic sign of Rakta Arbuda. It is studded with fleshy buds and it increases rapidly. It can continuously discharge vitiated blood, and this is the usual type of cauliflower cancer that you see. Mamsa Arbuda has a different kind of pathology. It follows a blunt trauma to the muscles, and the injured parts get vitiated and swollen. It is painless, smooth, and often the same color as that of skin. It is non-suppurating, but hard and fixed. This is totally a benign pathology. So the arbuda, where you see a lot of growth of mamsa, is actually rakta arbuda, and it is not mamsa arbuda. Mamsa arbuda is a benign feature, whereas rakta arbuda is the one which, because of this particular samprApti, that is the sankocha and sampidana of the rakta within the sira, as referred to in the earlier slide. When there is pathology within the srotas or within a particular dhatu, certain types of pathology can reflect more on the coming dhatu rather than within itself. Within itself, because Rakta doesn't have a very solid feature, it can keep circulating anywhere in the body and begin this kind of pathology there. But you see it when it attains this kind of anatomical deformity, in this kind of hard physical mass, and that is Raktarbuda. Medajarbuda, it increases or decreases in size with the increase or decrease in of the fat in the body. Smooth, big in size, and so on. So it is usually the feature you see in lipomas. It can occur anywhere in the body, and it can occur around the breast as well. Now we come to discussing of particular causes, because what we can do is what we can try to do is to balance it out here and prevent the pathology or restrict the pathology. You see, these are the general factors which can contribute to shofa and which can contribute to increasing of the particular doshas and dhatus, increasing as well as vitiation of these particular doshas and dhatus. And I have highlighted the ones which are most relevant in today's world. There are others as well which may be relevant, but these are the ones which are more common. Excess intake of katurasa, ruksha laghu shita ahara, dried vegetables and dried meat, and certain activities like running, swimming, lifting weight, walking long miles. All of these activities probably are good for few people or good in certain moderation. But when we tend to overdo certain thing because it comes under the category of healthy, or that is what you have to do to be healthy. We don't apply the individualized mind or that kind of limit. Then we tend to either overdo or underdo it, and that is where we have the problem. Excess of katu, amla, lavana, vidahi, tikshna. Again, say repetition of the same stuff here. It can cause vitiation of vata. It can cause vitiation of pitta as well. Eating burnt food, barbecues or grilled foods. They may smoked substances. They may be very appealing, but then you have to have certain balance, and you have to know when to eat, how much to eat, and who can consume to what degree. Traveling and fasting. This trend of intermittent fasting or fasting for a very, very long period for whatever reasons, it could be religious, it could be personal belief, or it could be for health purpose. But unless it is moderated, it can lead to various kind of health complication. And excessive intake of madhura, amla, lavana. Again, amla, lavana is repeated from pitta to kapha. And wheat, sesame, starchy food, yogurt, milk, rice, puddings, sugarcane products, and aquatic substances. Sweet food. I want you to focus on madhura rasa here, because madhura, or the sweet taste, in the Rasabhedi Adhyaya as well as Vividhashitya Piti Adhyaya, Charaka specifically mentions, Acharya Charaka, madhura is one of the causative factors for arbuda. It is a direct factor which can cause arbuda, and today we know for a fact that increased glucose level or increased sugar is one of the features that can cause DNA mutations, or which can cause impact on a cellular level. It has an impact on cell division, and it can also cause a lot of other kind of pathologies, including the prameha and madhumeha pathology, and also inflammation. So excessive madhura rasa is one of the direct things that can cause inflammation in the body. Ati snigdha, ati ushna, ati drava, and vidahi annapana are the ones that can cause problems in rakta. Now, how do you see the trend in, or how do you understand it in the present world? Now, we have this kind of tendency going to the beach and getting some in the name of lots of hydration, drinking a lot of sour juice. I mean, it could be in the form of fruit juice, it could be in the form of whatever drink it is. It could be categorically very healthy as well. But then in this particular context, sitting in hot sun or getting exposed to very hot sun, and at the same time drinking too much of drava. You need hydration, but you need moderation as well. Exposure to too much of heat as well as too much of liquids at the same time is not good. It is something which can create problems in rakta. It is a direct causative factor which can create problem in rakta. And rakta, say this is the one, atapa and suryatapa, agnisevana, exposure to sun or heat, and too much of atidrava along with it. So these problems in rakta, it need not always produce only the arbuda or something of that kind. Rakta, when it gets vitiated, it produces the most important thing that it start producing is the moles or pigmentation disorder, or it can start bleeding disorder. So pigmentation disorders are direct reflection of ati drava and ati agni sevana. It breaks the bond of bondage, or it breaks the kind of consistency rakta should have, and this can lead up to any kind of such disorders. And pigmentation disorders, of course, you know what I'm talking about. It is you can say in the form of moles or melanoma or whatever it is. But this is how it is linked. Mamsa, abhishyandi, ati sthulakara, ati guru ahara. Again, the ones that we indulge a lot in these days. Too much of mamsa can cause mamsa problems. Of course, excessive indulgence in meat, and excessive indulgence, especially in meat which is of heavy property, heavy for digestion, and which already contains too much of heat. So, say for example, red meat. But whatever meat it is, if one indulges in such diet every day, and if he's habitually not used to it, if it is not satmya for that person since generations, then that can create a problem. There could be few people who have been indulging in that kind of diet habit with those particular varieties of meat and with those particular recipes for generations. For centuries, they have existed that way, and for them it could be okay. But for a totally different person to all of a sudden start such a lifestyle because it is all right in that particular place, it is not all right for that particular person because that particular person doesn't have that kind of family history. So it can reflect either in that particular person or his or her children as well. And Meda, Snigdha, Guru made an increasing food. Now, the most common example I can think of it is cheese, and especially the fresh cheese. Fresh cheese, and as you see in the other category as well, the dairy products, yogurt, milk, and some other varieties of milk products. It's called as kilata and raga, shaka raga, and so on. So, produce of dairy. It doesn't mean, I don't mean to say that everything that comes from dairy is bad, but ethically, when it is sourced, milk is the best food. That is also the point of view of Ayurveda. But then, when it is not in moderation, or when it is not, when the source is not right, then that can create a lot of problem as well. The substance which is extremely good can cause extremely bad problems as well if it is not used in a proper way. And avyayama, lack of exercise, divaswapna, sleeping during the daytime, especially during the lockdown period, and some of the other things that we do in the name of health or in the name of comfort. Either ways can cause problems for us if it is not practiced in moderation. And this is just to mm, put it in the same way, just to highlight the importance. Rakta, when it is vitiated, can cause visarpa. Again, we have discussed that it can cause vidridi. It alone can cause visarpa and vidridi. These are the rakta predominant diseases or disorders. Mamsa can cause adhimamsa, excessive growth of excessive abnormal growth of mamsa, and arbuda. And the treatment here is samshodhana and shastrakshara agni. The same thing that probably triggered it can also cure it, but you have to be very careful while doing it. So the other crucial factors, arbuda, granthi, and the shofa develops. We discussed that it happens, or the pathology probably begins in the skin, twak, mamsa, and rakta. And when it involves twak, it involves the sixth layer of twak, and that is rohini. And this is also the state where there could be pigmentation disorders like vyanga, nyacha, and so on. The moles and such growths can also happen in this layer of twak. So when the skin is involved, when there is cutaneous involvement or subcutaneous involvement, it is always in this layer of twak. Madhura rasa is specifically a triggering factor for arbuda. Lavana rasa is specifically a triggering factor for shofa. Of course, amla is also a triggering factor, but this is the prime one. Non-vegetarian diet and excessive indulgence in meat, or everyday sahasa, that is the word mentioned, that is always or very frequent indulgence in meat, and especially of those animals which again are dependent on meat. If that is the case, then it is the prime. But even otherwise, indulgence in non-vegetarian diet is the direct reason or direct nidana. Adhimamsa, or simple benign muscular, not muscular, I can say simple benign growth of mamsa can turn to arbuda at any time. So any benign feature, even granthi, has the capacity to turn itself into arbuda if it is not resolved in a proper time. So any inflammation, that is ranashofa, shofa, or adhimamsa, can turn itself into arbuda. Arbuda is also a complication of Vata Rakta. So if at all someone has Vata Rakta, they should be very careful. This is one of the very, very direct risk factor. And improper panchakarma can also lead to arbuda. Arbuda is the last of the pathologies, and that is why I'm focusing on that. So before that as well, it can lead up to granthi, it can lead up to shofa. So we have to counter in each level. Prevention is the best thing. But when you see the initial pathologies, which may seem very irrelevant, which may seem very no safe, it is good to stop it at that level itself before it goes to any further point. So application of Kriya Kala for prevention and cure as well. So when there is Chaya, the feature of Chaya is that pragdvesho vriddhi hetushu viparita gunechacha. You feel a person would feel an aversion to anything that causes the increase of that particular dosha. If there is such a feeling, respect that feeling and stop indulging in that particular substance or that particular property. So the dosha comes back to its normalcy by itself. So it's stop the process. Nidana parivarjana. Avoid those things which can cause any kind of imbalance. In the stage of prakopa, recognize prakopa. So you see that a particular dosha is already aggravated. Stop the process. Reverse, treat the dosha and stay away from nidana. In prasaravastha, or when you see a generalized feature of that particular dosha, again recognize it and treat the nidana as well as the dosha once again. If it reaches the level of sthana samshaya, then there is involvement of dosha as well as dosha. It is not just in the limits of dosha anymore. You have to understand where it has lodged in and treat that particular combination, the complex of dosha, sthana, dosha, and that is dhatu, upadhatu, mala, and so on. So you have to start treating the disease from there on. It is easy to stop it in any of these three stages. So this is the best place to stop. Once it reaches here, it's already gone into a complex. So I'm just putting a general line of treatment here because the treatment here can be very, the application of treatment can be very complex. So just giving a general line. Sneha, Sweda, and Shodhana, that is Panchakarma. A detailed, proper Panchakarma with the proper following up. That is most important. And at every level, you have to make sure there is Samyak Yoga. There should be no compromise there. And Samsarjana Krama, or the Patya or the diet and the restrictions that should be followed after each Shodhana should be followed meticulously. And external applications can be of great help here. Lepas and bandhas are very useful. Rakta Mokshana is very, very useful in case of inflammatory process. So even for generalized inflammation, or even if it is a localized inflammation, Rakta Mokshana helps a lot. It helps to a great extent. Like it reduces half of your effort. So if it is a generalized inflammation, you may try phlebotomy if it is allowed, or if phlebotomy gives a great result, and I've seen this in my practice. So in India, when I'm a Shalitantra student, so we do practice what I'm saying. I'm saying it with experience, so it works. And hereditary, and specifically in case of mammary glands, or in case of mastitis or inflammatory process going on in breast, even in a lactating mother, this is the best thing you could do. You solve the case to a great extent just by hereditary. It is absolutely painless. It is the simplest procedure. and it gives extraordinary relief with all the symptoms, as well as it reverses the pathology. It helps in reversing pathology. Hydrodermatherapy may be the only treatment at times if it is a very mild pathology. But I mean, if it is in a beginning stage, or if it is in combination with other herbal stuff, or any other medicines that you want to give, that could also go very well. But hydrodermatherapy specifically for breast inflammatory diseases in breast, it works wonders. It is a soft organ, it is a very tender organ, and you cannot do a lot of things over there without causing other kind of impacts. You know, putting an incision can have cosmetic implication. So hydrodermatherapy is the best thing you can do, and you can stop the inflammatory process without going to the suppurative stage at all. And if it is more of an existing pathology like Granthi or Arbuda, then Shastra Karma, Kshara Karma, Agni Karma, or even Krimi Chikitsa could be done, but not specifically on breast. But Shastra Kshara Agni can be practiced if the inflammation has reached the suppurative stage, or if it is a benign or malignant growth as it is, which requires to be removed. Line of treatment of Ranashofa, of Raktapitta, of Visarpa, of Vidridhi, and even of Vatrakta can be followed here. And special yogas or special gana. Now, Guduchari gana is important. Manjishtari gana is important. Sarivadi gana also is very useful. Vidaryadi gana is also useful. So Vasa, Guduchi in combination is also an excellent preparation here. So for each purpose, you have different medicines. Like for Sweda, Sneha, you can use the same similar gritas, and for Shamana, you can use similar gritas. So for Shodhana and Shamana, you can use the similar yogas here, and these are the important ones to remember. So that's about it for now. If at all you have any questions, you want to discuss anything else, please do. Thank you for your kind words. I hope it gave you what you were looking for. And if at all you have any questions, please put in the chat. It would be good to have a discussion. Or if at all you want to share any experience from your end, from your practice, or from your from somewhere you know, it would be good to share with everyone. Well, there's a question here about shortage of iodine. It is argued that it can be a problem with thyroid, breast, and ovarian cancer. Yes, the current argument is on those lines. You see, when we speak of any particular substance, it could be iodine, or it could be a particular vitamin, and so on, then we cannot integrate that kind of view altogether from an Ayurvedic perspective. It is very hard to mix both the kind of a thought process. You can, what I do is I keep this information in one side and always cross check with what goes on practically. And if this theory stays in place for at least 15-20 years, then probably it is worth considering. If it is changed tomorrow, that is what is happening. What we studied or what was the truth 20 years ago is not the truth anymore in modern medicine, most of the things today. So those things which were believed to be very good a few years ago are not good anymore, and those things which were very bad few years ago are excellent. That is something you have to do every day today. And even in context, you see, all of a sudden I see a lot of CQ10 and collagen and such things in the shelves of health food shops, and even everything mixed with iodine, fortified with iron, fortified with some kind of trace minerals and so on. All of a sudden, I don't know how much you have to go along with that, because when you put it, or when you take it down to that level in this reductionistic fashion, it is not holistic anymore, and overdoing something can also create some problem. For this, in this instance, excessive iodine can create a lot of other problems. So how do you balance between deficiency of iodine, which is causing, or causing some problem, and excess of iodine causing a different problem? Where do you stop? It is like saying tomato is good for your heart and bad for your kidney. Where do you stop in between? So going or following that line of argument is a little hard for me. I think more of a holistic view would be helpful. Sorry, I didn't answer your question in a straightforward manner, but I don't know if there is a straightforward answer. And synthetic bras, well, in general, bras are very faulty in design. It obstructs blood circulation, and because they come in our standard size, and people are not of standard size, there is a, I mean, 50% of the times, at least 50% of the times, it causes a lot of problem. It can cause postural problem, it can cause circulatory problem, it can cause other kinds of problem by creating deposition of sweat and heat. So yes, I am very not just a synthetic bras, but the role of bras in causing problems overall, the breast related problems overall is something that we have to think about. Suitable, comfortable clothing, if someone is in that business, it is good to do some research and design new things there. About cheese. See, cheese in moderation is good, but it has to follow the Rutu pattern. Certain cheese may be good in certain places, in certain Rutus, in moderation. So this rule, if we follow, it is good. And fresh cheese are good for they are balya. They increase rasadhatu and they increase medas. If it is properly digested, it will nourish every dhatu up till shukra, and probably even ojas. It should not be sour though. It should be fresh, sweet. However, it is heavy for digestion, and it should be taken in a very, very small amount. If it goes in excess, and especially to those people who are not satmya for it, or in an improper rutu, in improper dose, it can cause equally dangerous problems as well. Aged cheese, definitely, that is by tradition as well as by from the viewpoint of Ayurveda. Aged cheese is always better. But again, you have to see the Satmya. Hydrogen is a leech therapy. So application of leech, it is very simple. It is something which one can practice at home itself. But most important thing is that you have to select the right kind of leech. And so you get the right kind of leech which is not non-poisonous and which is specifically used for this purpose. And you store them in good clean water like in aquarium, and then you have to select the location where the inflammatory process is going on. Say if it is about the size of 2 centimeter diameter, I would use 2 leeches, and you have to apply it in either side or just around the swelling or on the top of the swelling as well. You can apply. It is easy to apply leech. Make sure you don't apply it anywhere near the natural orifices. So yeah, I have plenty of examples of that. I don't want to go into that details, but yeah, it is better you avoid any kind of natural openings. But yeah, breast is a very safe place to apply. You can't go wrong. You have to put the leech there and keep it moist. You have to keep the leech moist to encourage it to suck on the vitiated blood. So keeping a wet gauze over it and just nursing it with some few drops of water every now and then would make it more comfortable for the leech to suck. So when the leech has sucked good amount of blood, it probably reaches the double of its size. It becomes really big, and at times it falls off by itself. And at that time you can collect the leech from it. If it is not falling off by itself, and if you think it is good amount of blood that has been removed, then put a little bit of turmeric at the mouth of the leech and you can pull off the leech easily. And clean the wound and apply some aloe vera over the wound, and that is good. Aloe vera and turmeric is a good mixture. So there will be a little more bleeding further as well, because leech applies a certain chemical which acts like blood thinners, and there will be continued bleeding for some time. But the other important thing that you have to remember is that you have to make the leech vomit the blood. So you put it in a container which contains turmeric and water, or just turmeric, thick paste of turmeric, and leech naturally throws up all the blood, and then you put it for rest and restoration. At least for 3 weeks you won't touch the leech again. Whereas here with the patient, you can follow up with herbal medication if at all you want, or if the condition is under control, you don't need to do anything. Just keep following up, keep under observation until the pathology is completely reversed. So, how anger and grief, the influence of anger and grief. Well, this is a very deep question. It acts in different levels. You say, what we are physically, we exist physically because we exist mentally. There is a famous quotation of Steve Jobs, I exist, I think, therefore I exist. I mean, it's not originally from Steve Jobs, but he repeated it. But it is very true. We exist in the mental space first. That is, if you are familiar with the Srishti Utpatti Krama, or the evolution of life, then that is how human life or any life comes into picture. It starts from non-physical level to physical level. We evolve from there, and every cell has that kind of root. It works on the basis of emotions. The cells bond together because there is the kind of affection, and if there is no affection, they wouldn't sit together. And that is the property of kapha, and in the mental space, that is the property of sattva. Whereas anger and grief comes with rajas and tamas. All three in balance will help in existence of proper life, physically as well as mentally. When they are out of balance, when there is predominance of rajas or tamas, then there is problem which can either be in the mental space or which can reflect physically. And when it reflects physically, it disrupts the cellular activity as well. Each cell, when it is subjected to anger or grief, it can show impaired functionality. And it is not just with living cells, it is with every molecule in this world, in this universe. Every molecule in this universe will align to such emotions when it is subjected. I mean, you can say it is emotion or you can say it is the kind of energy, but they do align to it. So just to say, there is, we do a particular course about, we don't have that particular slide here, but there is a course that is run from Veda Education about pregnancy and pediatrics as well. So we discuss these things in detail in that course. If at all you're interested, you can join in. And of course, Veda Pulse has this particular instrument. You probably are already aware of it, and it has a module of Veda genetics where it speaks about, or where it mentions the genes which may be susceptible. See, that is a very practical instrument. I use it in my clinic for reading pulse, and it also has different types of assessment, like organ pulse, nidana, energy, and there's beautiful music of heart as well. And it's wonderful, and the kind of research they've done on it is great. There are recommendations and many other science involved as well. It is not just Ayurveda, it also speaks about TCM, yoga, and so I love the instrument basically. But as other thing, it also gives an idea of genetics, you know. So with the pulse reading, it also tells you about the genes which are probably at risk in your body. It is very individualized as well. So you need to look into these genes if at all you are under a particular risk, or depending upon your present state of dosha, it says where the risk factor is, and one can use it to work on doing the reversal. So doing the lifestyle changes, doing the food changes in food habits, or having certain treatments does provide a change in this expression here. So it is a useful instrument. And so, I mean, I just remember that I didn't tell about this. So it came with the context of anger and grief and how it represents in the genetic level in each cell, how it can have an influence. And it does have an influence on every emotion has an influence on cellular level as well. So this is a very interesting observation here. Regular Virechana before menstruation works well with breast cyst and Amapachana. Yes, sure, it does. I mean, seasonal Virechana, in whenever there is spring in your place, or sorry, not spring. In Australia, I prefer spring because that is the best time in Melbourne. But if at all you have a season of rain and season of and winter, and there is a gap in between, that is the best time to practice Virechana after Varsha Rutu and before winter. That is in Sharad Rutu. That is the best time to practice Rutu Virechana, and I find this is a very, very good habit, provided you do it in a proper manner. Proper Sneha, Pachana, Deepana Pachana, Snehana, Swedana, Virechana, and Samsarchana. It is the best way to keep all the problems in line. So, does fresh cheese mean homemade cheese in the Indian style? Well, it is not just Indian cheese. It is any kind of fresh cheese. There are a lot of varieties of fresh cheese available, which is made out of fresh milk, and the shelf life is very less in that case. Very tasty, very abhishandi, and very uh, guru as well. So I think that is it for today. We have reached the time. Is Triphala powder good to avoid inflammation? Triphala as rasayana would be useful, but in taking Triphala powder with water, with warm water every day, that is not the way you do it for rasayana. For rasayana, Triphala, balance it with a little bit of Yashti Madhu powder, take it with honey and ghee at night. That would be a better rasayana. Taking Triphala Churna with warm water every night may suit few people, but may not suit few people. It is Triphala is good for inflammation, yes. And if there is an active inflammatory process, I would rather prefer Triphala Gugulu. So thank you. Thank you all for joining in. And if at all you have any more questions, please email it to me on yes.drb or to Veda Pulse Veda Education. Thank you and see you again.